I just want to talk a little bit about the archetypical story of good and evil, because it's really what this is about. So we're all born innocent, right? We come into the world and we're innocent. We haven't done anything wrong. We haven't seen great evil. We haven't really seen great good either. We haven't seen anything. That's what innocence is. You're not tainted by good or evil. And so, we come into the world, our parents are our protectors and our guides to this world. And certainly when we're young, they are perfect in our eyes, really. Like, our parents are perfect and they know all the answers and they protect us. And at some point along the line, we begin to realize that our parents are not gods. And that's really how we see them when we're a kid. We see them as perfect and we see them as protective and they know everything. They're omniscient, and that's really what a god is. But we realize that our parents aren't gods and that they're humans too, and that they're flawed, fundamentally flawed, as we all are. And we also begin to see this in the world. We begin to see the same thing in our culture, which could represent, in a sense, our father, and the world as a whole. I mean, we begin to realize that there's a lot of flaws and that there's a lot of evil and bad and so on, imperfections, if you will, in the world. And it's a really difficult thing for us to reconcile. It's a very difficult thing when we first realize this in our youth, that there is this in the world, that there is the capacity for great evil, and it's hard to accept it. And it's what we all would call the loss of innocence, the loss of that purity, so to speak, because that's really what it is. We're losing our innocence. We're losing the idea that there is no evil in the world, and so we have to accept that there is. And that's hard, man. That's a really difficult thing to do. It's hard to accept that there is great evil in the world, especially when we're young and we're coming to see it for the first time. So I don't want to downplay that at all. That's a very difficult thing, but in any case, we set out into the world at some point, and we set out to do good. We set out to do good, and we set out to bear our cross, so to speak, which really means to take on responsibility, to hopefully make the world a better place. And really what that is it's an adventure. We're setting out into the world to go on an adventure, to take on responsibility and to make the world better. And that's what we all should aim to do. That is the path. That's literally the path. But throughout our life, we always reach certain times, certain points where the evil just seems really too great, And it's not normally one thing that goes wrong. Normally we can handle like one bad thing that happens. For example, we can handle like a death in the family, and it sucks, but we can handle it and get through it. But when you get a couple of them together, when you get 2 or 3 or maybe even more bad things that happen at one time, it can really become overwhelming, And it's at these times where we really begin to question the goodness of the world. In a sense, we begin to question if there actually is any good in the world, or is life worth living. It's something that people reach that point a lot throughout their lives. It's not just one big event, and you might call this something like a midlife crisis, and it does happen. By the way, those crises do happen several times throughout your life. We all talk about the midlife crisis, but there are several that happen throughout your life, and maybe that is what this is. I haven't really given that specifically a lot of thought, but perhaps what that is. But in any case, we all have these times where we're overwhelmed by several bad things that are just sort of piling on top of each other. We begin to feel crushed by the weight of that. And it's at these specific times where we are really susceptible to bitterness, to anger, to resentment, and we're really just teetering on, turning to the dark side, so to speak. We're really, because that's really what that is, that resentment, that evil, hatred, like that, those are all obviously bad and evil things. And when we become overburdened, we're really susceptible to that. I mean, that's just the truth. After all, how could we justify all of this evil and all of this darkness in the world? How can we justify that? It's a hard thing to come to terms with. It is when you're young, and it doesn't really get particularly easier as you get older, because as you get older, you realize that perhaps that there's a lot more. Not that there's more that you've gotten older, but the fact that you were able to understand that there is more evil and bad things, and you can become more compassionate and empathetic and really feel those bad things that are going on. And so these are the critical times. These are really critical times in our lives where we got to be really careful. We have to really be careful, because there's only two results, right? Either we remain ourselves, we remain good, the good guy, or we don't, or we turn to darkness, we turn to evil. And so that's a very critical time in your life, as it's going to come several times throughout your life.